Hey everybody, what time is it? No, it's not. It's time for Tales and Mysteries of the Mojave Patrol.
Well, I never knew I had Martians in my garden, and I never knew there were aliens on my roof. I got shadow people, and they're living in my basement. Got a funny feeling Bigfoot's gonna be here soon. I was so blind before, I was so unaware, but now I swear I'm seeing Sasquatch over there.
Hey patrol members. Welcome back to the Mojave Patrol. Let's get dialed in here for the evening. This one keeps the mosquitoes down. What a 4th of July weekend I've had. Let's get you a little closer. Scoot you over here. Wrong way. Total rookie. A little more. That's good. Went up to Tehachapi, Santa Maria area. Spent about 4 days up there. Am I in the red battery zone already? I better not be. I got spares. Let me trim open the cigar. Actual cigar knife. Got a cigar cutter right here for smaller cigars, like sheer roots. Tonight's offering is a Castle Hall by Gurkha. I bought a Gurkha collection. Okay, so when you light your cigar, you want to make sure you get the whole perimeter of it lit evenly. This helps cut down on canoeing, and what canoeing means is that the cigar burns at this weird angle, and you have an unburned piece down here, and it's really a pain. Really a pain. You don't want canoeing to cigars. Now we have a Breckenbach beer. I don't drink beer that often, but I'm having a beer tonight. So I'm going to tell you that long-awaited tale. Everybody's been aching to hear. About ice and beer. Now, I prefer a bock beer or a dark beer, personally. That's my own personal choice. People can like the beer they like. You know, I'm not a beer snob. Oh, you should only drink the finest lagers made in Germany. No. Drink what you like. Drink what you like. Don't worry about what other people say or think. You know what you like. No. Next week I get to relax. I still got stuff going on this week. Don't be shocked if my phone rings. Speaking of that thing, where is it? Oh, it's in my pocket. In case anybody's wondering, my ashtray is the bottom end of a French 75 from the Great War. I think this shell was minted around 1914, but I don't know when it was fired. So it could have been 16, 18, 17, 15, who knows. But let's get started. Wow. I would say 40 years ago, I used to work at a place called RSR Corporation in the City of Industry. And I think at the time, I had like 4 or 5 cars. But I worked with this guy named Gary, who was a world-class drinker. He drank a lot. Well, anyway, he had a 1964 Ford Falcon. Had an inline 6. And he drove it to work and back. It was primer gray. It was pretty straight, except the front grille and bumper had a bunch of dents in it. You know, they put those concrete-filled steel pipes in front of liquor stores for a reason. And that's the reason. Well, anyway, he came to me one day in the break room and said, "Hey, you want to buy my Ford?" I said, "I don't know, Gary. It's kind of beat up." "Oh, no, runs great." I said, "Okay, how much?" And he looks at me and goes, $100. Sure. So the next day I showed up at work with $100, and he had the pink slip and signed it all over to me. And, you know, my next day off during the week, because we had this rotating shift where you did 2 days days, 2 days swing, and 2 days graveyard, you know, and your days off fell after the 6th day, right? So you were constantly having different days off, and I worked that way for almost 15 years. I think in all the time I worked there, I had like a whopping one 4th of July off and 2 Christmases and no Thanksgivings, you know, 1 New Year's. But anyway, I drove the car home that night, and my roommate brought me back, and I picked up my other car, and I had this 1964 Ford Falcon. And I drove the living bejesus out of that thing, and it got pretty good gas mileage. I would say it very realistically got close to 24, 25 miles to the gallon, a little 6-cylinder, 3 on the tree, you know. It was a great little car. I mean, the interior was a little tired, but hey, you know, for $100, you weren't complaining, you know. My other car was a 1957 Chrysler Imperial, and man, I got about the same miles per gallon with a 392 Hemi. There must have been something seriously wrong with that Ford. But anyway, I drove it every day, drove it to work and back. You know, went here, there, and everywhere. So one day, I decided to take it out to the desert. Because we went camping in the desert a lot. Now you're thinking, Bill, it's a Falcon. Yeah, but you know what? It's a light car. It had a pretty high ground clearance. You know, it had these tall, skinny tires. And it got good gas mileage. I went up Cajon Pass, 60 miles an hour. It was pulling good, you know. And you know what? If you took out the back seat, you could carry a lot of crap back there. So here's what I did. I filled up my camping crap and I took it to the desert. And I took it camping. I took it to the mountains to go camping. I took it a lot of places out there in no place. I drove it off-road. Now, you know, that being said, I knew where I could and couldn't drive it, you know. Or other guys at 4x are going through axle-deep sand. I was like, nah, it's not for me. I can't do that. Can't do that. So I had 2 friends. I had a buddy named Ray. Well, he's still a friend of mine. He lives in Florida. And his brother-in-law was named Brian. Right? And we'd all go camping together, go target shooting and rabbit hunting at that time. I don't hunt rabbits anymore, but in those days, you know, you went hunting rabbit, you know, all you needed was a 22 rifle. You were set, you know. I had a little 22 rifle made around 1919 that I bought for $25, you know, at a pawn shop. And it shot shorts, long, and long rifles. It was a single shot bolt action rifle. I still have it. And it still shoots. But anyway, that's what I would take, and you know, you hunt rabbits with it. Target shoot. Back in the days when 22s were 37 cents a box. Yeah, remember those days? I go to Western Auto, buy a box of 22s for 29 cents. Yeah. Yeah, you could buy a 500 round brick for, you know, $4.99. Yes, those days existed. I remember getting 8mm Mauser for 5 cents a round. Yeah, yeah. $5 100. And not cheap World War II surplus. This was brand new Canadian made stuff. Military surplus. Really nice. Really nice. You buy all kinds of surplus ammunition. I mean, surplus ammo was cheap. You know, 9mm was like 7 cents a round. You could still go to the gun store. You get 9mm Largo. You get 9mm Bergman Baird. You get like this Israeli submachine gun ammunition in 9mm. You know, 38s are $5.56 a box, I think. Yeah, gasoline was 80 cents. And when I got my driver's license, gasoline was 29 cents. Yeah. Hang on, I'm going to need my hanky here in a second. I remember going to McDonald's, and you could get a burger for 15 cents, get a fries for 10, and get a Coke for 10 cents. A small Coke. You know. I mean, you can get 2 burgers, a fries, and a Coke for under $1. You go to Taco Paco. There used to be a place called Taco Paco here in the town I live in, West Covina, and the burgers, the tacos were 4 for $1. As a buddy, as a case in point, a buddy of mine, we'd go camping, and he would go through McDonald's or Jack in the Box. For those of people who live on the East Coast, you don't know what Jack in the Box is. It's very similar to McDonald's. I mean, it's just similar. They have completely different. They have their hamburgers with mustard and with mustard and ketchup and pickles and onions, and they have their fries and they have their Cokes. But you know, Jack in the Box has things like tacos and egg rolls and curly fries and stuff McDonald's doesn't have. So. But let's put it this way: he would get like 10 just regular hamburgers and throw them in his ice chest, and that's all he'd eat for the whole weekend. Be out 3 days, and he'd eat 9 of them. One for breakfast, one for lunch, one for dinner. That's all he needed. And sometimes he'd bring a bag of Fritos, that type of shit. As a matter of fact, I remember one time we went with him out to this place we called the Bunker, and he had a Ford Ranger pickup with a shell on it that he inherited from his dad when his dad passed away. So we threw all our crap in the back, and we're driving out to the desert, and the dirt road is bumpy. He's banging, we're bumping, stuff like that. And we get to where we're camping, and he had a 5-gallon plastic gas can. One of those ones you get at like Pep Boys. And it had broken open. And the entire bed of the truck had flooded with gasoline. Yeah. My food, my sleeping bag, my blankets. That was a rough weekend. But don't worry, he shared his 10 burgers with me, so we each stretched 5 burgers over 2 days. But that's not where this happened. No. But anyway, the year after the first space shuttle disaster, and I'm sorry I don't know what year that was off the top of my head, guys, but a year after the first space shuttle disaster, my buddy Ray from RSR and I were driving. I had I still have it to this day. I have some topo maps from the United States government, a series of maps from 1944 to 1948. And let me tell you, if you want to find stuff, you need to find topographical maps from those times. Because if you get modern ones, all the really interesting crap, they leave off the map. Right? They just leave it off. It's not even on there. All the abandoned mines, all the abandoned structures, especially out here in the California desert. They don't want you going there. They don't want you going there. A lot of it's still there. Old military bases and installations. I mean, there's very little left but foundations and lines in the desert. But they're still there. One of the reasons I don't want you to go there is I don't want you metal detecting. Because you might find something good. Well, you might think it's good. The government might not think it's good. Well, California might. So here's how it works. In enlightened places, if you're metal detecting on public or private property, and you have permission to be there, like on private property or in a public parks or places like that, and you find stuff buried in the ground, you can keep it. You can keep it. It's yours. You found it. It's been buried for 150 years. If the people who owned it had family members who wanted to claim it, they should have been out looking for it. They should have put in an effort. Right? In England, if you find quote-unquote treasure, you turn it over to the government, and they give you a portion of what its value is. Right? That's how it works. Well, here's how it works in California. Anything in the ground over 50 years old belongs to California. And screw you. You could have a piece of property that belonged to your grandparents. And when you were a little toddler and your grandfather goes, "Here's a nickel, son. Take that nickel and put it in the bank and watch the interest grow. And someday you'll have 2 nickels." Yeah, like you were going to do that. But let's say you ran outside and you were playing rough and stuff and you're 5 years old and you're rolling around on the ground with your older brother, younger brother, the dog, the neighbor kid, whatever, and you go in the house late that night and you lost your nickel in the yard. It's lost. And you went outside as a little kid and you looked for your nickel, but you couldn't find your nickel. Fast forward 55 years later. Now you're 60. But your parents had the property and they passed, and now it's your property. And you're out swinging in the backyard with your metal detector and you find that nickel. Wow, that's the nickel I lost when I was 5. I'm gonna leave it in the ground because that nickel belongs to the state of California. So, here's how California is shooting themselves in the foot. They're going to tell you that nickel, see, that's canoeing. See how it's sloping? Now, sometimes it can't be helped. Sometimes the way the cigar is rolled, you know, these, they say they were handmade, so I believe it. So handmade cigars, you can get canoeing. So I'm going to take this torch lighter and I'm going to get that going. I hate doing that, but sometimes you have to. Oh no, oh no. Woo! Okay, so Breckenbach, pretty good beer. So, oh yeah. So here as California shoots themselves in the foot. If you're out metal detecting in a desert, or in your backyard, or God knows where, and you come across actual treasure, and you know you're not going to get jacked for it, you're just not going to tell anybody. You're not. You know? You're not going to say anything. Maybe it is historical. Maybe it does belong in a museum. But you're the guy who went out looking for it. You're the guy who went and found it. You're the guy who wasted his resources, expended. I shouldn't say wasted, because if you find something, it's not wasted. So you expended your resources, and you expended your expertise to go out there and find it, and turning it over to somebody out of the goodness of your heart. Sorry, that doesn't always fly. It doesn't always fly. So, here's what's going to happen. God forbid, and I'm not saying you do this, because it's illegal. Do not do this. But God forbid somebody finds some ancient treasure. Indian, Aztec are buying gold, Spanish gold, lost federal payroll, stuff like that. And you look at it, you find a chest with $10,000 in face value of $20 gold pieces from the 1800s, and knowing that's a lost army payroll or a lost payroll to some mine, and you think to yourself, I'm just going to turn this over to a museum. It's going to go back to somebody's garage, and I'm going to break out the gas axe, and they're going to heat that stuff into gold. They're just like gold nuggets or bars of gold, and no markings on it. And they're going to make little molds out of plaster of Paris or sand or whatever, and they're going to melt down, and they're going to take it, and they're going to tell somebody at the place that buys gold, yeah, I have a small placer claim in Arizona, and I'm getting this out of the ground there. And they say, well, they could analyze that gold and know it comes from a gold coin. No, it comes from a gold coin. Well, I'll tell you what. You take some old wedding rings or cheap gold you get at the thrift store, or some just gold settings or dental gold, and throw it in there, and that skews that whole thing. That skews it. So you can do a test on it, and you can say, wow, it's this, but it's got this and this in it. You know. So California, wise up. If somebody finds real treasure, offer them 40% or more, and then that probably will happen less or not at all. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, if you're walking along an old military base that was out there in World War II, and you find an OK ration can on the ground, and pick it up and take it home and display it, that's against the law. They would rather have you leave that until it's a brown stain in the sand, and nobody knows what it is. Because if you think the state of California is going to send archaeologists to some godforsaken spot in the desert where Patton's troops pitch a tent overnight and look around there for artifacts and things like that so they can put them in a museum someplace, not happening. Not happening. Sure, there's big bases out in California where the Army had set up camps. Fine, don't metal detect in there. But man, on some of these maps I have, it shows march routes, places. I've gone there on Google Maps and I've seen it. As a matter of fact, if you go watch one of my videos, strange things found in the desert, there's some of those that I found on Google Earth from my maps. I've gone and looked in those spots, and they're still there. I don't put locations down, but you'll see the old military base out in the middle of the Mojave Desert. And it's not something you can get to unless you have a 4x. I promise. I promise. You're not getting there. A couple you can, but a lot of them you can't. I know abandoned mines out in the desert where if you don't have a good 4x, and I'm not talking about a Subaru Brat or anything like that, where your 4-wheel drive, your car says 4-wheel drive, no, a real 4x. Dodge Ram, Gladiator, Ford Bronco, something you built, a big Jeep, something like that, you're getting there. But if you got like your pedestrian 4-wheel drive car, it's not happening. Not happening. Anyway, back to this. So, my buddy Ray and I are looking over the map because this guy I used to work with named Dick, Richard, told us about a place he found in the desert years and years prior. People were still living there when he first came by. So we're looking at our maps and we find a place. We think we know where it is. So we pack all our stuff in Ray's 4Runner and we take off out for the desert looking for this place. We're driving and driving, we're driving. We spend one night in this old place where there used to be a railroad station out off of Kiddies Road. It's not there anymore. We drive farther and drive farther, and you know what? Lo and behold, we find it. We find it. And we spent the night there. We went back and we told our buddies, and we took a bunch of people out there. We tried to keep it a secret for as long as possible. And one of the problems we ran into was that the road going to this place was very hard to drive on. Very unimproved, very a lot of washouts. Was a lot of washboard. Was starting to get sandy, and blah blah blah. Oh, it's getting dark out. Isn't it getting dark out? It's getting pretty dark. Anyway, two things happened. The railroad that runs parallel to the road of the place we found, they replaced all the ties, and they drove a bunch of equipment back and forth there. So they graded the road, and that allowed more people to find it, and it really got junky after that because people were staying there and dropping all the trash. And then the second thing that happened was there was a gypsum mine near there, which they reopened for a short period of time, and once again they graded the road to allow big trucks in there so they could haul gypsum in and out. And that's where the mining company made a giant mistake, because they graded the road without getting permission from the BLM, Bureau of Land Management. So the BLM shut them down. Yeah. So now the road is pretty much reverting back to its old state. And here's the other problem. National Trails Highway is closed at Ludlow. So getting there is even more difficult now than it used to be. But we still get there. Yeah, because we have the wherewithal. But anyhow, back to this. So, we decided to go camping. Ray and his brother-in-law Brian and myself, we decided to go out to this area we call the bunker. And I was going to tell, I took my Ford Falcon, and Ray took his 4Runner, and Brian rode out with Ray. And we took two cars because, A, I don't like being that far into the desert by myself, because crap happens. And if you go watch my video about the lost astronomer, I might put it here someplace so you can see about it. That's what they did. He and his daughter went out there by themselves, and they got totally stuck. And that was a Subaru. I mean, practically, I know I'm being facetious, but you know, when you say, yeah, you stuck up to the door handles, that's pretty close. And if I hadn't come along, God knows what they would have done. Because they were there for 8 or 9 hours, and I was the first guy to come by. Let me tell you, at the time I found them, there were not a lot of people who drove back and forth on this road. Well, anyway, I bought one of those big cheap ice chests, you know, the styrofoam ones with the styrofoam lid. Remember, they used to be really ubiquitous. You don't see them that much anymore. Because styrofoam bad. So I filled it up with ice and Schaefer beer. I think Schaefer was on sale. It was I could get a case of Schaefer for $5, $5.95, 12 cans. Or was it 24 cans? I think it was 12 cans. So I bought 2 cases of Schaefer and filled them up, put them in the bottom of this big styrofoam ice chest, and I put it in the back where the back seat would have been. And I filled it completely to the top with ice. And in the back seat, I put in 4 one-gallon jugs of just the Arrowhead water, and I took off. Well, I had my sleeping gear and all my other crap back there, right? We took off, and we took off with Ray. We're driving down the dirt road. We finally get to the bunker, and we set up camp. We're target shooting, right? And Ray says, "Hey, let's let's go to the black metal mine. I said, sure, we'll go up to the black metal mine. So, the black metal mine is about 10 or 12 miles, maybe as far as 15, from the bunker, up against the Old Woman Mountains, which, when you're at the bunker and you look at the Old Woman Mountains, they're 10 miles away. And that's another thing you have to be careful of when you're traveling in the desert, is judging distances. Now, when I was in the Army, we'd go into the field and they would teach you how to judge distance and how to be cautious, because they took us out to this middle of nowhere in the middle of the night, and they put us up in these bleachers, and they shut off all the lights. There were these lights on poles. They shut them all off, and we actually just sat in those bleachers for 30, 40 minutes so that your eyes got accustomed. So when you go from light to dark, your eyes develop this stuff, I'm pretty sure it's called rhodopsin, and it helps you see in the dark. And in the first 90 seconds of being in the dark, you develop like 60% of your night vision, and then the other 40% takes about a half hour. And if you look at a bright white light in the interim period, all that is destroyed. You got to start from scratch. So when you're sitting in the desert and you look a long distance, what looks like something that's relatively close can be quite far. As a matter of fact, the astronomer was trying to walk to a place at the base of these mountains that he thought was just a few miles away, and it turned out to be 20 miles. They were going to walk 20 miles. And this was, I think, January or March, when even though the daytime it was like 70-something degrees, the nights were getting into the 30s. And they had no jackets. You know, he had like a velour shirt with a gold zipper and a big ring zipper pull. And his daughter had, who was probably 10 or 12 years old, she had like spandex leggings and a pink leopard print and like a froofy frilly top on. And they would have died. They would have died. They would have made it. So anyway, Ray says, hey, let's drive out to the black metal mine and we'll look around. We haven't been there in a while. And I said, sure, you know, and we loaded up our stuff and we're getting ready to take off. And the black metal mine is an old gold claim, and there's remains of a house there, and there's a tunnel which is a couple hundred feet deep, and then a hard rock tunnel, and then there was this beautiful head frame above part of the mine, and these railroad tracks that went from the mine out to this wooden bridge that went off where the mine cars would dump their tailings, and some dickweed burned it just in the past few years, just the past 2 or 3 years. You know, hey, let's go out to the desert and find something that's been there 100 years and burn it. Now, I don't know who thought, I don't know what kind of people think that's a good idea, but let me tell you something. Whoa.